Amazing millionaire feints to test fiancé, but the housekeeper exposes a shocking truth. The lavish restaurant buzzed with sophistication. Silk-draped tables, flickering candlelight, and the soft hum of cultured chatter. Sam Harrison stood by the window, the city lights twinkling like stars in a suburban sky, and he felt the weight of his impending decision looming over him like a dark cloud. With a net worth that had soared into the millions, he had clawed his way to success through grit and determination. Yet as he nervously toyed with the engagement ring nestled deep in his pocket, a profound unease gnawed at his gut. What if Lily's love was merely tethered to the luxurious life he had built? What if their connection was dictated by dollars and status, not sincerity and bond? She was a schoolteacher, someone whose kindness radiated even in her most mundane tasks. How deeply did her adoration run? Sam's thoughts spiraled in circles, each one steeped in doubt. Would the truth of his wealth shroud their relationship as deeply as he feared? When the moment arrived, Sam orchestrated an elaborate scheme. He would feign a fainting spell, a test to gauge Lily's amorous instincts. After all, trust was essential, but could it withstand the test of unreal scenarios? The thought twisted like a knife in his chest as he drew in a shaky breath. Just as he prepared to collapse, the atmosphere shifted. Mrs. Jenkins, their devoted housekeeper, arrived bearing dessert, but her distracted state turned explosive. "Oh dear, did I tell you about Lily's grandfather?" she blurted out, her eyes wide. "He was a great inventor, created things that changed lives." In that instant, Sam's world shattered into fragmented pieces. The realization struck him harder than any fall. Lily, the soft-spoken woman who filled every room with light, had a heritage of genius. Her grandfather's inventions had laid the blueprint for what he'd merely built upon. It rendered him nothing but another cog in an innovative society, reliant on the brilliance of others while he indulged decadently in his success. Was he an imposter wrapped in wealth? Panic clawed at him, leaving him breathless on the restaurant floor as he gripped the ground for support. He had wanted validation through deception, but all this would summon was confusion. What if Lily only loved him for the lavish dinners, the expensive travel, and the life he provided? And now, compounded by Mrs. Jenkins' unwitting revelation, the truth seemed more distant than ever. Lily's expression morphed from panic to a dawning realization. Could she truly reconcile this newly discovered legacy with her love for Sam? They were already navigating the intricate dynamics of class, and this emotional tsunami was a fresh wave. Their disparate backgrounds drew lines in the sand that no amount of affection might erase. Nothing felt steady anymore. Each choice felt freighted with the potential for ruin. Sam's mind raced in chaotic circles. Had he misjudged everything about Lily? As he tried to rise from the ground, dread tightened around him. This wasn't just about proposing. This was about confronting who they were against who they aspired to be together. But would the burden of love, family, and legacy crush them both beyond repair? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As the tension thickened, Sam stood with a tremor in his hands, questioning if the legitimacy of his love could withstand such a staggering truth. Had he truly opened his heart, or had he built a fortress of insecurity behind his fortune? The world around them blurred as doubts darkened the horizon, and Lily, looking down at him, served as a reflection of every fear he harbored. The weight of their insecurities loomed heavy, increasing the chasm between them. Whether they could close it, or whether the fear of inadequacy would forever tip the scales in one direction, remained uncertain. Sam took a deep breath, releasing a shaky sigh as he rose from the restaurant floor. The muted ambiance that had once wrapped around him in comfort now felt cold and suffocating. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, fueled by the gravity of what had just been revealed. For a fleeting moment, he had sought validation through his absurd test, and instead, he had unearthed an unsettling truth about both himself and Lily. As he locked eyes with her, he saw ambiguity. Confusion danced across her features, reflected in the shimmering candlelight that flickered on the table between them. He could feel the weight of Mrs. Jenkins's words hanging in the air, charged with an energy that crackled with potential for both destruction and understanding. "What does this mean for us?" Lily finally asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The sincerity in her tone tugged at Sam's heart, but he was ensnared in a web of his self-doubt. He had built his life one brick at a time, driven by ambition, and yet now he was questioning all that he once held sacred. "It means I might not deserve your love," he replied, the words tumbling out before he could tether them. The thought cut him deeper than he had anticipated. Was he really the man he pretended to be, or merely a facade built on the foundations of others' accomplishments? Lily's brow knitted in confusion. "What are you talking about, Sam? What does money have to do with how I feel about you?" What a foreign concept that felt to him. In his world, success reigned supreme, often equated with worthiness. Wealth separated people, elevated status, and perhaps he felt he had succumbed to this narrative, wrestling with the fear that he was simply a byproduct of those who came before him. He hesitated, grappling with the emotions that clawed their way to the surface. "I'm terrified that my wealth was never something I earned on my merit. I'm just a businessman capitalizing on the ingenuity of those like your grandfather. I feel—" His voice faltered as he confronted the relentless truth. "I feel like a fraud." The look of disbelief on her face tore at him further. It was as if his deepest, darkest fears spilled over like an ink blot, staining the very essence of their relationship. "If I stripped all of this away," he continued, gesturing towards the opulence surrounding them, "would you still love who I am underneath?" The question rang with desperation, a plea carried on the winds of insecurity. Sam felt raw, and the vulnerability almost paralyzed him. Lily's expression softened as she took a step closer. "It's not everything, Sam. Love is about support, understanding. It's so much deeper than just wealth." He wanted to believe her. He wanted to be that man who was worthy of love regardless of his bank account, yet his mind raced, taunted by doubt. "I don't know if I can chase this ghost of self-worth that's been haunting me. I don't want to ruin us, Lily." Shame wrapped around him like a heavy cloak. "You won't ruin us, but you have to let me in. You have all the success on paper, but it's who you are that matters to me. Your heart, your passions." There was a fire in her eyes that ignited a flicker of hope within him. But instead of solace, Sam felt the tumultuous waves of confusion crash against him. What was he supposed to do with this epiphany, this twisting turmoil that threatened the very foundation of their love? Could they move forward, or were they trapped in opposing worlds? Doubt clouded his mind, until he noticed the reflection of the city lights mixing with the shadows in Lily's expression. In that moment, the brewing storm within him and the vulnerability she displayed merged. The acknowledgement that the journey ahead would undoubtedly test them both. As he looked into her eyes, he felt a spark of determination he hadn't noticed before. This wasn't just about navigating their disparate backgrounds anymore. This was a quest for self-discovery, and a path to redefining what love truly meant. But as the tension hung high, Sam felt the urgent need to confront the reality he had built. Was he willing to risk it all and dive deep into the uncharted waters of their connection? Or would he allow the fear of inadequacy to keep them tethered to their separate worlds? The moment of decision loomed, but how far would he go to reach the truth waiting just beyond the horizon? Sam's heart raced as he grappled with Lily's unwavering gaze. It was a mirror reflecting the turmoil surging within him. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, and in those shadows he saw the forms of his regrets, his uncertainties, everything weighing down on him like a heavy shroud. "What if I'm a fraud?" he murmured, half to himself. He had spent his life calculating risks, crafting strategic alliances and building an empire. Yet here he stood, overwhelmed by a singular vulnerability, his worthiness outside of wealth. The notion clawed at his insides, unearthing memories of his upbringing, where success was the language spoken at the dinner table, but love was often an afterthought. Lily reached out, her hand capturing his. The warmth surged through him like a beacon. "You're not a fraud, Sam. You've achieved a lot, and you've done it with tenacity." There was care in her voice, the essence of comfort wrapped in unwavering support. Tenacity built on others' foundations, he thought bitterly. The voices of doubt whispered incessantly, questioning his value and purpose. What if every contract he inked had more to do with inherited privilege than his own merit? What if his success had always been shadowed by a facade of incredible luck and connections? "I need to figure this out. Alone," he stated, his voice more resolute than it had been in the last hour. The confession stung, but it held a clarity that was almost liberating. He needed silence to confront his insecurities, without the presence of loving compassion that he had come to rely on. "Sam, wait." Lily's voice broke through the fog, her brow furrowed in concern. Yet, he took a step back, instinctively creating distance that felt necessary. He sensed that facing oneself often required solitude, even if it meant creating a rift that might strain their relationship. The following days passed like a slow-moving train. Sam threw himself into his work, engaging in meetings that felt hollow against the backdrop of his internal chaos. He loitered in corporate discussions about growth strategies and financial forecasts, yet the metrics were shadows of his deeper contemplation. Amid the swirling thoughts, he realized he had abandoned the joys that once fueled him, the simple pleasure of artistry, the thrill of creation, and the genuine connection with those around him. He began exploring his old hobbies, rediscovering the paintbrushes and canvases that had collected dust over the years. As colors swirled on canvas, Sam became lost in the rhythm of creation. Each stroke allowed him to confront the fragments of himself he had neglected. He began painting his fears, his achievements, and intricate portraits of those who influenced him. Characters etched in the narrative of his psyche. This raw expression provided a cathartic release, transforming self-doubt into an art form that was uniquely his. However, with each painted layer, the pressing question persisted. Who was he beyond monetary measure? Hours dissolved into days, and the yearning voice of introspection grew louder. Sam realized that uncertainty would always be intertwined with courage, and for the first time, he envisioned a world where vulnerability and strength could coexist. No amount of wealth would ever substitute for a genuine connection to self. He was ready to confront the truth, to pull back the curtain and stand firmly, embracing the complex tapestry of his existence. Yet as he put the finishing touches on a striking piece, a thought struck him with unexpected fervor. Could the truth be a daunting revelation, or a transformative one? This notion propelled him forward, and he found himself at a crossroads. Would he reveal the introspection to Lily, bearing his unvarnished truth, or would he keep painting the facade he had woven? With renewed determination, Sam recognized that to move forward, he must summon the courage to expose his hidden self to the one person he feared could walk away. The moment was ripe for confrontation, yet a lingering anxiety bled into his thoughts, compelling him toward a deeper understanding of love. A journey that would either bind them together or unravel their connection forever. As he prepared to share his revelations, he felt a blend of excitement and dread coalesce within him. The pivotal decision awaited, and he wondered if he could muster the strength to embrace the unknown while stepping into the openness of vulnerability, or if fear still governed his choices in love. Sam stood in front of the large canvas, a myriad of colors blending together with each stroke of his brush. The paint dripped onto the floor, forming a vibrant chaos that mirrored the turmoil within his mind. It was no longer just a hobby. It was an expression, a way to confront the disoriented self he had hidden behind an impressive portfolio of achievements. But tonight felt different. The hues weren't merely colors. They were voices of his past, lingering doubts, and for the first time, he felt as if he was capturing his very essence on the canvas. A distant knock on the door pulled him from his trance. He stepped away from the painting, the remnants of anxiety bubbling below the surface. It was Lily, her face a mixture of curiosity and concern as she entered. "I thought I'd find you here. I wanted to talk," she said softly, eyes lingering on the canvas, her interest piqued. There it was. His heart raced as the weight of his decision loomed over him. Would he share his struggles with her, or keep each layer of truth hidden? The decision felt monumental, teetering between vulnerability and self-preservation. "Hey, Sam!" Her voice broke through his internal conflict. "What's going on?" He swallowed hard, the words caught in his throat. The bond they shared was built on trust, yet sharing the raw, unpolished parts of himself felt like a risk he had never taken before. "I've been painting," he replied, his voice steady, as if to convince himself as much as her. "It's therapeutic." "Therapeutic? That sounds like something profound is happening. Can I see what you've created?" If only she understood. He turned slightly, gesturing toward the half-finished piece. There it was, a depiction woven from his fears and unshackled ambitions. Yet, could he let her see what lay beneath the facade? He hesitated, the brush hovering over the palette, torn between wanting her understanding and fearing her judgment. "Wow, Sam." Her words were gentle, reverent as her eyes traversed the canvas. "It's beautiful. There's so much depth here." Her praise felt both validating and disarming. A shiver ran down his spine as her gaze remained fixed, and he struggled with the swell of emotions it stirred inside him. "It's just paint," he countered, wanting to diminish the significance of his creation, masking the vulnerability palpable in the air. "Just paint? This isn't just paint. This is you," she challenged softly, yet firmly. "You're expressing something real, something raw. Why are you holding back?" In that moment, the tension between them wavered, and he realized the true battle was within. The fear of rejection rooted deeply in his past experiences. How could he articulate the truth that spiraled within him without sounding like a fool? "Because I fear, Lily. I fear that I am not enough, that my accomplishments mean nothing when scattered against the backdrop of who I truly am." The words spilled over, birthed from a place long buried within him. Lily's eyes widened, a mix of empathy and understanding washing over her. "You are enough, Sam. But you must believe it. You're not the wealth you've amassed. You're not the deals you've brokered. You are the courage it takes to confront these doubts." The room shifted, the stark contrast between his internal battle and her unwavering conviction suffusing energy into their conversation. He felt himself teetering on the edge of something profound, and it frightened him. For once, he was shedding the layers of bravado that had defined his interactions. "But what if I fall short, Lily? What if I fail to transform this anxiety into something tangible?" He felt raw and uncertain, yet all he could do was embrace that vulnerability. "Then you try again," she replied, her voice steady like a beacon. "Growth happens at the edge of discomfort. You cannot paint the sky if you fear the rain." Her words ignited a spark in him, an idea that began to coalesce amid the chaos. Maybe the next step was to embrace failure as part of his journey, not an end to it. Still, uncertainty grasped at him like a vice. As the two of them settled into a silence of contemplation, Sam gazed at his canvas, seeing possibility emerge from confusion. The question of revealing himself to her hadn't diminished. It had exploded into a motive, a powerful urge to forge ahead, to transform pain into promise. But the looming uncertainty still lingered. What if she couldn't accept his darkest corners? What would it mean for their relationship if the truth ripped apart the carefully constructed tapestry he had begun to weave? With time almost slipping away from him, he felt the daunting echo of the moment pressing on his chest. As they sat lost in a flurry of emotions tangled with revelations, he pondered whether it was time to take the step further into the unknown. The pivotal moment beckoned, the decision to unravel the threads of his well-crafted life, laying bare the unflattering truths that haunted him. But would he step forward into the light of vulnerability, or would he retreat back into the shadows of his insecurities? The tension hung thick in the air, and as he met her gaze, he felt the gravity of their connection pulling him down a path marked by both fear and eagerness. What would he choose to reveal next, and how would it shape the course of their relationship? The moment of revelation loomed larger than life, and the reality of action weighed heavier than ever. Sam felt the weight of vulnerability settle heavily on his chest, just as the sharp scent of paint lingered in the air around them. It was as if Lily had handed him a brush to paint the truth of his existence, and every stroke required a level of courage he'd scarcely summoned in years. His fear of appearing weak or lost gnawed at the edges of his mind, battling against the exhilarating notion of authenticity. "Do you want to see more?" he asked, the words slipping out before he fully grasped what he was offering. There was a flicker of fear in the back of his mind that he might overwhelm her with the load of his reality, yet it was equal parts a relief and an invitation for exploration. "Yes, but only if you're ready to share more of you." Her eyes searched his, and for the first time, he felt a silent agreement hanging between them, a pact unspoken, yet powerful. He took a deep breath, letting it out slowly. "I don't even know where to begin, Lily. Every brushstroke feels like a crack in the dam that holds back everything I've built." He gestured toward the canvas again, the raw colors pulsing with hidden stories. "Every layer represents something I haven't had the courage to express." "What do you mean?" she asked, leaning closer to the canvas, the moment drawing them both in deeper. He hesitated, but in that pause, revelation sparked within him. It was a complex web of guilt, legacy, and self-worth that made his heart race. "I've spent years perfecting a facade that I fear the world will find out isn't real. The art business, the investments, it's all so distracting. I use them to deflect attention from the fact that I don't really know who I am underneath it all. It's as if I'm parading a costume while hiding the core of my being." Lily nodded, her expression encouraging him to dig deeper, to unearth the roots of his truths. "And what makes you think you have to be all those things to be worthy? Doesn't it feel lighter when you explore what's behind that facade?" "Lighter? Maybe, but terrifying too." The admission sent a shiver through him. What if the real me isn't enough? What if I'm left with nothing but a blank canvas? "Then you create again," she replied, her voice capturing a new conviction. "You can always add layers, Sam, just like you did with this painting." He felt a flicker of determination light within him as he registered her affirmation. Perhaps she was right. What lay beneath the fear could hold the promise of regeneration. Could it be possible that raw honesty would somehow bring clarity? As they stood in the quiet chaos of the studio, Sam allowed himself to consider the beauty of imperfection, of failure and growth entwined. The aim of the brush was to create, and here, maybe the aim of his revelations was to just be. "Maybe I can start by sharing what lies in my heart, even if it's not articulated perfectly," he murmured, considering the weight of that beginning. It was a fragile step toward unmasking, but what would happen if he embraced the prospect of failure? What could it free within him? "Exactly," she encouraged. "Start where you are. You've built an advanced life around a simple truth, Sam. You're much more than the achievements you wear as armor." With each word spoken by Lily, layers of the uncertainty began to peel away. Maybe it was time to dive into the depths of his fears, unveiling parts of himself even the mirror couldn't reflect. "Let's do this together," he said suddenly, feeling emboldened. "I want to delve into this, unlock something more real, more beautiful." The promise hung between them, interwoven with hope and fear. He could see a future where vulnerability wasn't a sign of weakness, but a path to authenticity. But as he committed to the revelation of self, an unsettling thought constricted his heart. Was he truly ready for the reality that lay beneath his polished surface? And would this willingness to explore himself lead to greater understanding between him and Lily, or force a wedge between their growing bond? Sam's mind buzzed with possibilities, and as he turned back to the canvas, the question nagged at him. Would he embrace the shadows as well as the light, or would revealing too much unravel the tapestry they began to weave together? Each brushstroke was the precursor to a moment of clarity, yet also an invitation to confront the uncertain future ahead. As the weight of his decision settled within him, a thought sparked in his mind. What if the true masterpiece of his life lay just beyond the threshold of fear? The canvas called out to him, promising avenues untraveled and emotions yet unexpressed. But a chilling realization crashed down. What consequences would his journey toward honesty bring to those he cared for most? As the afternoon light waned, spilling a golden hue across the canvas, Sam felt both invigorated and paralyzed by the enormity of what lay ahead. He could feel the paintbrush trembling in his hands, as if it, too, sensed the weight of secrets and revelations trapped behind his guarded facade. What was it about diving deeper into the abyss of his own fears that was so alluring yet daunting? "Let's start with the piece you've been avoiding," Lily's voice gently prodded. Her attention was unwavering, anchoring him in the moment like a lighthouse amid a storm. "What's the story behind those harsh strokes in the corner?" Focusing on the canvas, he saw not just paint, but symbols of all he had hesitated to confront. "Those are the reminders," he finally said, fear knotting in his stomach, "of choices that felt wrong yet were made out of necessity." An uneasy silence settled around them, and the weight of expectation pressed down on his shoulders. "What choices?" she pressed, her eyes remaining steady, coaxing his vulnerability further into the light. His breath caught. He had scarcely allowed himself to articulate these thoughts. "The ones that led me to believe I had to hustle relentlessly just to stay relevant. I've compromised relationships, values, everything, focusing only on success. But success is hollow when the accolades don't resonate with who I am inside." The words tasted bitter as they spilled out, yet there was a hint of relief as well. Lily's expression softened, the gentleness breaking through his apprehension. "That feels like such a heavy burden to carry. No wonder you crave authenticity. You built a life around lies cloaked in achievements." It felt inappropriate to deem them lies. Perhaps they were distorted truths. "Or perhaps," Sam uttered, compelled by the crackling energy in the room, "I was just a coward. Cowardice is safe, right? It allows me to slide by, not risking rejection or failure. By being the successful entrepreneur, the admired art dealer, I arranged my life as a defense mechanism." "Or a prison," she interjected, and he could see her unwavering belief in his untapped potential reflected in her eyes. He nodded solemnly, becoming increasingly conscious of the shackles he had fashioned for himself. "But if I reveal my vulnerabilities, then who am I? No longer just the millionaire, but the man with scars, fears, and dreams unfulfilled." An unexpected clarity danced at the periphery of his thoughts, something he hadn't anticipated. What if the act of laying down my armor opens a door I've kept shut for too long? But how do you even begin to transform those jagged edges into something beautiful? "By creating art out of your mess," Lily challenged, eyes gleaming, buoyed by the adventure of the unknown. "What if discussions around your identity, your past failures, your dreams, become the strokes that define your existence? When we paint over our imperfections, we breathe life into art that reflects our truth." As her words sank in, the fear that had previously gripped him transformed into a piercing urgency. in shedding his polished armor? Was he truly prepared to welcome others into the chaotic harmony of his existence? The more he thought about it, the more exhilarating it became. Each brushstroke was not simply about him, but could create a rich tapestry of connection, vulnerability, and resurrection. But would embracing this rawness usher in not just understanding from Lily, but also joy in the face of uncertainty? Sam swallowed hard as he weighed the possibilities ahead, a magnetic pull driving him deeper into his thoughts. Could he rise from the ashes of his prior choices and emerge into a world where sincerity was more than a defense? It was a profound strength. His heart thudded against his ribs as a startling thought jolted him awake. What if the truest masterpiece of his life was not a singular achievement, but rather the weaving of honest human experience? Yet even as he teetered on the brink of this realization, a nagging anxiety pressed at the back of his mind. Would he still be accepted? Still be loved after unraveling his true self? The minute silence that followed resonated with clamoring questions, wrapping the room in anticipation. He looked over at Lily, sensing the warmth of encouragement prompting him forward, but also aware of the precarious precipice upon which he stood. "Where do I start?" he finally asked, his voice barely above a whisper, knowing that the answer could shift everything. But the moment hung in the air like a fog, dense with possibilities and fears intertwining. In that suspension of time, a realization surged through him. He was teetering on the edge of an exploration destined to transform not only his art, but his very essence. As the weight of his decision loomed larger, he felt a compelling urgency to seize the moment. And in that raw interplay of longing and fear, he braced himself for the tumultuous journey of self-discovery that lay ahead. But the most important question remained, echoing ominously in his thoughts. What if revealing too much imperiled not just his self-acceptance, but the tender bond blossoming between him and Lily? As silence enveloped the room, Sam felt the weight of his unspoken words pressing against his chest like a stubborn tide. The vibrancy of his surroundings began to fade, replaced instead by a swirling storm of introspection. His gaze lingered on the harsh strokes in the corner of the canvas, each jagged line a reflection of the turmoil within, echoing his reluctance to delve deep. Lily's voice, soft yet insistent, pierced through his haze. "You start by confronting the foundation of those strokes. What are they crying out for?" Her question ignited something dormant inside him, an ember's flicker of courage masked beneath layers of self-doubt. Could he really take that step into the mire of his soul? He glanced around the studio, noting its cluttered corners filled with vibrant art that told stories of struggle and triumph. This space was a sanctuary, yet somehow it also mirrored the chaos that mirrored his inner world. "I suppose," he began hesitantly, "I could talk about the fear that underpins my drive. I'm always terrified of inadequacy. I built a fortress of success around me, thinking it would shield me from criticism. But it feels more like a solitary confinement." Lily nodded, her expression reflecting both understanding and encouragement. What if you could use your art to articulate that fear? What if each brushstroke became a vessel for your truth? A deep breath steadied him. The idea was unsettling, yet strangely exhilarating. "I've always seen art as a means to impress others, to showcase my status. But maybe I could turn it into a means of connection instead, to share my fear, my shame, my failure." "Yes," she urged, her enthusiasm infectious. "Let it flow. Create from that raw, uncomfortable place. The pieces of you, each scar, each doubt, can become a narrative more powerful than any accolade. Imagine the impact if you transformed your pain into a masterpiece." But even as her words resonated within him, doubt wormed its way back in. "What if I fail? What if it's not enough?" he countered, unable to ignore the trepidation flooding his thoughts. "Failure is a part of creation," she replied matter-of-factly. "It's the residue of authenticity, the reality of growth. And what's more daunting is the fear of not trying, the fear of remaining stagnant." With every pulse of conversation, Sam's heart opened a little more. The act of voicing his fears diluted their power, transforming them into stepping stones rather than barriers. As he picked up the brush once more, he understood that each stroke could unravel layers of his conditioned existence. What if the fear he had allowed to govern his actions became the very source of inspiration? What if he could paint a journey from insecurity to empowerment? His hand hovered over the canvas. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, envisioning vibrant colors emerging from the darkness, blending into shapes that represented not just struggle, but also growth. This wasn't merely about art. It was a reflection of his own metamorphosis. Gritting his teeth, he pressed the brush into the paint, unleashing a torrent of emotions he had long restrained. The lines began to form, spilling over onto the blank space, chaotic yet striking, mirroring the tumultuous waves of his psyche. Lily's presence remained a steady beam of encouragement as each stroke bared a sliver of his soul, raw, unfiltered, and powerful. In that metamorphosis, he rediscovered fragments of himself that had remained buried beneath the guise of success. But even as liberation washed over him, uncertainty lingered. What would it feel like to open up completely? Would this revelation draw Lily closer or further away? Sam paused, the brush suspended just above the canvas. An unsettling realization settled into his bones. The journey of vulnerability would not just reshape his art, it would also redefine his relationships and uncover new depths within himself. With a deep inhale, he glanced at Lily, who stood silently, embodying both the muse and the mirror to his evolving self. The delicate balance of dread and anticipation coursed through him. "Are you ready for that truth?" she asked softly, sensing the tension in his hesitation. He nodded, not yet certain of the answer, but compelled to push through the murky waters ahead. In that moment, he found himself confronting the essence of authentic existence, a contradiction of beauty and fear. As he returned the brush to the canvas, he wondered, would the tapestry he spun capture not just his journey, but the intricate dance of love and self-acceptance, even when faced with the unknown? The question loomed heavy, and as he painted fiercely, he realized that revealing himself was where the real masterpiece awaited. Would he seize the moment, or would the shadows of doubt choke the burgeoning flame of his transformation? The battle had only just begun. As Sam's brush glided over the canvas, a surge of emotions poured out of him like a torrential rain. The colors began to coalesce, each hue more vibrant than the last. He felt liberated, yet disoriented, lost in the kaleidoscope of his own feelings. The jagged lines he had once despised transformed into dynamic representations of his inner struggle, blatantly raw, yet hauntingly beautiful. With each stroke, he confronted the lurking shadows of insecurity, allowing an unexpected vitality to fill the room. Yet, the deeper he delved, the more he realized that this was not just an artistic endeavor. It was a personal reckoning. The act of creation morphed into an exploration of his identity, igniting questions he had studiously avoided. Who was he without the accolades? Without the accolades, would he still feel worthy? As this inquiry cemented itself in his mind, a tension gripped his chest. Lily's presence became a buoy as she walked closer, eyes sparkling with admiration. "You're capturing something powerful. Your vulnerability is your strength," she encouraged, her tone inviting him further into this realm of openness. The encouragement resonated deeply, yet Sam felt the duality of his experience, fear coiled tightly alongside his emerging sense of self. "What if others don't understand this?" he whispered, the sound muffled by the weight of his doubts. "What if they only see the brokenness?" "Let them," she replied, her voice unwavering. "Your truth, broken or not, is yours to tell. This is about you connecting with yourself, not about how others will perceive it." Her words hung in the air around him, a palpable challenge. He studied the chaos on the canvas, broken strokes mingling with bursts of color, creating an inimitable design. Here lay not merely a reflection of despair, but the promise of resilience too. How could he bend that truth even further? Turning back to Lily, a wild idea struck him. What if I documented not just the finished art, but the process itself? I could expose the behind the scenes of my struggle, allowing people to witness my transformation and the freedom that comes with vulnerability. Lily's face lit up, the flicker of inspiration igniting something within her as well. That's a brilliant concept, Sam. It can turn art into a dialogue, opening up a space for others to share their own stories. As they spoke, energy rippled through the studio, invigorating his resolve. Yet, beneath that excitement lurked his old nemesis, fear. What if opening himself up would lead to more rejection? What if he failed at this raw honesty? Despite the growing flame of ambition, he found himself hesitating. How could he trust others with his heart when he had built walls for so long? He turned back to the canvas, vulnerability eating away at him like rust. In this moment, Sam needed to confront the lies that had kept him shackled. It was time to shed the mask and embrace the paradox of being both broken and whole. Without thinking, he placed the brush down and took a long, deliberate breath. Lily watched, an encouraging smile still lighting her face, while Sam tried to conjure the courage to fully commit to this new undertaking. His journey transcended far beyond merely conjuring paint and canvas. It demanded an exploration of his raw essence. He recognized that confronting his fears meant embracing the jagged edges that defined him. As he picked up the brush once more, he felt a flicker of hope. Could this act of bravery translate into art that resonated with purpose? He began to scribble, loose marks at first, then more intentional strokes, crafting the first pieces of a visual of his chaotic yet hopeful metamorphosis. But in the back of his mind, another thought nagged. The judgment of the audience loomed large. What if they saw only a failure, a misguided attempt to be seen? Sam's hands trembled as he filled the canvas, a wild spectrum of emotion exuding from the combative interplay of shadows and light. In this vulnerable state, his canvas became a battleground, a true reflection of his transformation. He was not merely painting. He was engaging in a fight for authenticity. Feeling taut with expectation, he laid down the brush softly, allowing for a moment of clarity amid the turmoil. What he was creating, who he was becoming, was more than he had ever dared to dream possible. Yet, as the final flourish seemed to approach, another realization dawned. This was only the beginning of a quest that would test every fiber of his being. And in that moment of stillness, as layers of paint settled, a trembling tremor of potential surged through him. The fear that followed him like a shadow now appeared more of a partner on his journey. Would he truly embrace this path, even when facing the inevitable resistance? The question loomed heavy in the air, marking the threshold of a challenge neither he nor Lily could ignore. What awaited him was a turning point, a confrontation with both his past and the untold chapters yet to come. The journey ahead beckoned, and as he prepared to take the next step, every fiber of his being trembled with anticipation and dread. The time to confront his greatest fears had arrived. As the first rays of dawn crept through the studio, illuminating the remnants of the previous night's chaotic artistic frenzy, Sam stood before the canvas, each stroke now a testament to his evolving self. The act of creation was no longer just about paint. It had morphed into an entire ecosystem of emotion and reflection. Yet, the stillness brought with it an uneasy weight. Fresh doubts crept in as he considered the magnitude of what he had committed to do. Expose not just his art, but his very self. The energy that surged in him faded into a soft murmur of trepidation. The thought of vulnerability transformed into an exposed nerve. Showing his flaws was terrifying. Who was he without the facade of achievement, the accolades he so desperately sought? Was this newfound path merely a seductive illusion? Lily re-entered the studio, coffee in hand, her presence slicing through his doubt like a morning sunbeam. "You're in your head again, aren't you?" she observed, tilting her head as a knowing smile played on her lips. This feels massive, Lily, he admitted, clenching his fists, his stomach churning with multiple emotions. What if this process isn't enough? What if the world judges me harshly, sees only the broken pieces? Then you show the world those pieces. Because your story needs to be seen, she responded, a gentle yet firm conviction in her voice. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about honesty. He pondered her words, a war raging within him. The idea of revealing his struggles was daunting, yet slowly, as the coffee brewed and filled the room with warmth, the flickering flame in his chest reignited. With that warmth came a realization. The very act of sharing his journey could dismantle the walls he had painstakingly built. He picked up his brush again, allowing himself to be swept into the process. Layer after layer, he began to create a visual narrative of his struggles, interspersed with glimmers of hope, daring to explore themes of doubt, conflict, and resilience. Each stroke held more than color. It carried his stories, and as they bled into one another, they morphed into something far greater than he had originally envisioned. But as he painted, the harsh whispers of self-doubt seeped back into his consciousness. This was more than just coloring within lines. It was invitation, a raw invitation to witness his journey. With that invitation came fear, gnawing at him. What if he failed to articulate his truth? What if the rawness he captured fell flat, leaving him exposed and unprotected? Yet with each brushstroke, he noticed a shift. The fractured elements in his work began to mirror his own complexities. The pieces that once seemed disconnected were finding rhythm and resonance. Here lay a stark reminder that beauty could emerge from chaos. Perhaps it was okay to be a little bit broken within his art. In confronting those jagged edges, he unearthed layers of depth he had never acknowledged. The studio buzzed with a now familiar tension, one that propelled him rather than stifled him. He began to document the process. He jotted down reflections and insights as he worked, allowing his thoughts to surface free of judgment. Fluency of expression started to pour from him, not only onto the canvas, but within a journal as well. As he scribbled down each revelation, layers of resistance peeled away. A door opened within him, exposing not only fears, but hidden competencies he had scarcely recognized. He possessed the ability to convey collective emotion. He could echo the struggles of others with his art. This realization bubbled to the surface, igniting a sense of purpose that was fierce and intoxicating. Just as all seemed to align, a sudden ding of his phone shattered the moment. With a fleeting glance, he saw a notification from a prominent art critic, a name he had both admired and feared. The anticipation in his chest fluttered, morphing into anxiety. Was this the moment when external judgment would threaten to destabilize his blossoming resolve? As he hovered over the message, a multitude of thoughts cascaded through him. The nagging fear of vulnerability surged once more. Would this critic recognize the rawness and authenticity weaving through his work? Or would he drill down to a flawed narrative where Sam's fears were laid bare? With a deep breath that dared to steady his trembling hands, he poised himself to face the undeniable truth of his endeavor. This was it. The first step into uncharted waters felt both exhilarating and terrifying. What awaited him transcended mere critique. It was a confrontation with himself and the risks that came with exposing his innermost self. The tension grew, a palpable prelude to what lay ahead, as his heart raced to beat with anticipation. Would he rise to the challenge, or would he recoil back into the comforting shadows of anonymity? In that moment of indecision, he knew. The true test of his journey was just beginning, and the judgment he feared may very well become the catalyst for profound transformation. Standing tall, Sam regarded the vibrant chaos of color that sprawled across the canvas, a visceral testament to his inner turmoil and gradual transformation. The world outside his studio shifted from murky self-doubt to the clarity of purpose that had emerged through months of introspection and creativity. Where once he felt trapped beneath the shadows of insecurity, he now found a resonant voice capable of reaching beyond his fears. No longer concerned solely with the judgments of others, Sam had come to understand that vulnerability was not a weakness, but a vital strength. Each brushstroke had become a declaration of his commitment to authenticity, a heartfelt message that echoed his aspirations toward genuine connection. The spectrum of emotions he had poured onto the canvas felt liberating, a cathartic release unveiling layers of depth he once believed were buried in the depths of his heart. In the warm morning light, he powered through another layer of paint, channeling the newly birthed conviction pulsating through him. It mattered less what the world would think, and more about how revealing himself could invite others to risk their vulnerability too. It was a realization that transcended the aesthetic. He had transformed his struggle into a narrative of empowerment, rather than one of shame. Lily entered, her eyes filled with a spark of admiration as she stepped into the sanctuary of his expression. "This is breathtaking, Sam. There's so much honesty here. It resonates." Her words danced in the air, reaffirming his belief that art was a bridge to connection. "Thank you," he replied, unable to mask the warmth spreading through him. "I've been documenting my process, throwing everything on the canvas, my fears, hopes, and all the jagged bits that make me who I am. You've made something raw, profound. This is living art." A mix of pride and vulnerability coursed through him. He was willing to confront the totality of himself, his successes, failures, and those ugly pieces hidden behind polished accomplishments. The act of bearing his soul on canvas was now intertwined with a commitment to honesty, not just to himself, but to the world. But as the frame of self-acceptance solidified, Sam realized something extraordinary was on the horizon. His work was no longer only about him. It was a gift meant to inspire others. The awareness of the heaviness he had carried for so long lifted, revealing a universal truth. Everyone carries their own shadows. Sharing the unfiltered truths through art would invite authentic dialogue, creating community in the shared experience of vulnerability. He envisioned hosting an exhibition where he could lay bare his journey and invite others to reflect on their own battles. This notion electrified him. What if the act of revealing his story could ignite courage in others to embark on their own transformational journeys? "Sam?" Lily's voice brought him back from his daydream. "What are you thinking?" "I want to do more than just share my art," he admitted, twisting back to the canvas, excitement bubbling within him. "I want to expose my journey and host an exhibition where people can connect over their struggles." "Do it," she encouraged, a fire igniting in her eyes. "You have a story to tell, and sharing it can change lives." Each word she spoke became a drumbeat in his heart, propelling him forward. He would take this step, fully aware of the magnitude of vulnerability required. Taking a leap of faith could mold a space for connection, an exploration that could dissolve isolation and illuminate shared human experience. As days turned into weeks, Sam meticulously planned his exhibition, pouring his passion into every detail. The studio transformed into a sanctuary of creation, blending colors and narratives into cohesive pieces that spoke of struggle and resilience. With each completed section of his exhibit, he could feel an overwhelming pride swell inside him. He was no longer hiding behind the facade of wealth, but bravely standing open and exposed. The evening of the exhibition arrived, the air thick with expectation and urgency. Attendees filed into the space, marveling at the bold strokes and raw stories captured on the canvases. The lights danced off the paint, illuminating his journey as if inviting the audience into the depths of his heart. As they ambled closer, sharing whispers and emotions, Sam realized that the beauty of connection unfolded through sincerity and vulnerability. Each conversation sparked a recognition of shared struggles, evidencing that everyone was battling their respective demons, fear, isolation, doubt, inviting him to embrace not just his journey, but the collective tapestry of humanity. When the night concluded and the last guest departed, Sam stood alone surveying his creations, a profound stillness enveloping him. He had taken definitive action, initiating conversations that had the potential to transform lives, including his own. The exhilarating rush of accomplishment affirmed a newfound truth that resonated. This journey was far more meaningful than accolades or status. It was about embracing authenticity. He had not only conquered his fears, but had also established a profound connection with himself and began weaving together the complex interplay of vulnerability and courage. As he reached up to switch off the lights, he could feel the weight of the past lifting entirely, replaced with the solid confidence that stemmed from his experience. Sam stood at the threshold of a new beginning. He had evolved from a man driven by wealth to one rooted in authenticity. He felt fulfilled yet aware that this journey had only just begun. Embracing sincerity became not just an act, but a lifestyle, his way of inviting others into the light flooding his life. Now, with clarity restored and purpose reignited, he knew this was not the end, but merely the beginning of a life defined by love, trust, and the unwavering desire to explore the depths of both connection and self. The future glimmered brightly, a canvas waiting for his signature bold strokes, a storyteller ready to paint a world where authenticity and vulnerability reigned supreme. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.